Welcome back to another Chris and Retro. Tonight we're doing our fourth installment of a signature moment. We intend to do this every Sunday. I was traveling for work, as you saw the video last night. I had extensive travel for work, and this Sunday was part of one of my trips. So basically, it was impossible to do everything we were trying to do with the show on the road. So we are getting back tonight to talk to you about step 3 and the traditional 12-step programs. But as we've talked about in the steps 1 and step 2. First, we realized we're powerless. Can't do it anymore. Can't take it anymore. Step 2, there's a higher power. And for Sam and I, we call him God because we believe in a deity named God. We talked about that. Step 3, we're going to get into the next necessary portion of the work required to get to a recovered life in recovery. And again, I want to emphasize the work. One of the things that we've tried to make sure we drove home up to this point was that this isn't like, I know the 12 steps by heart, or I know all the cliches within AA. No, it is a matter of understanding what work do I need to do to understand my journey so that I can never go back. So I do not want to go back, and I don't go back. And so we're going to try to unfold some of those things as we understand them and with coaching that we've received from other people. So without further ado, let's get to work. Tonight on the phone, again, we've decided this is the best medium to do it based on where Sam is and the internet connections. I have Sammy Says. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I'm grand and glorious. We were joking before we got on here because we had to do sound checks and stuff like that. And it was kind of funny. We were talking about if by now we think the audience knows that we are acquainted. So we were talking about how the form. Yeah, we've met. Yeah, we talk about the formalities. We try to make sure we're doing this professionally, but candidly, we've met. We know each other. We know each other biblically, as they say. So biblically. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about step 3. And again, we are not experts. We're not clinicians. We're not anything. We're just trying to go through this journey with you, and as we understand what we've seen, and we're going to use some guides and things like that to try to help. But as a reminder to the audience, Sam, I've just put up a banner here that just says, number 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Keeping in mind, step 1, we said we can't take it anymore. Step 2, we realized there was a God. And now we're talking about the turning over piece. So Sam, as you considered tonight, what were your thoughts, I guess, initially on step 3?
Well, I think step 3 is a huge one. They're all important. Barriers to getting better. And I think I don't really, fear God making decisions for me. I think he has the right path. But I don't know, personally, I have a hard time not knowing how to know that he is making the right decisions for me. I'm not sure about you, but
that's kind of funny. I absolutely. It's not even so much about God making the right decisions for me. Do they align with what I want, what I think I want? It goes back to my controlling behavior. That's why they caution us. Really to pray to God to have him help us understand what is within our control and what isn't. Help us to know the difference. And so I think that comment you make is actually, other than fear, probably one of the most common things that we run into in recovery is just. We sort of say we give it to God, but at the same time, we're asking him to give us specifically what it is that we say we want. And if he doesn't, we throw out the whole notion that he's looking out for what's best for us because it didn't match up what we wanted. I don't know about you, Sam, but a lot of times, early on in recovery, what I want is entirely selfish. And usually it's related to whatever it was that I feel like I wanted in the first place and want to kind of barter with God, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
So step 3, really, if you could take one word and talk about it, it's really, I'm going to leave the step up here, but it says we made a decision. So, and really the decision is really boiled down to one word: surrender. We made a decision to surrender. So if you read the whole thing, great, but we made a decision to surrender to God, to turn our will and our lives, over to the care of God as we understand him. And why is, for me, we understand him just speaks to the journey of it. I've attested on the show before that my notion of what God was has vacillated through my whole life. When I grew up around a church and had one very different view of what God is back then than what I do now. It was an obligation. It was a religious construct. As I've gotten older, it's become a very personal relationship. Sam, you talked about the Catholic Church and your relationship there. I mean, how is your relationship in the Catholic Church? Not slamming Catholicism, so everybody that's a Catholic on here, calm down. But how is Catholicism and that version of God versus what you need to cling to for your recovery? Are they different? First of all, I guess is the question.
Yes, I kind of now feel like God's more like a fatherly figure than growing up in the Catholic Church. It was all about like religion, strict religion class, and the hymns we would sing in church, and like the scripture we would read. It was just, I don't know, it wasn't very personal, and we would pray after we got communion, and that's the only time that I really found, when I was in church, that I found any connection to God was when we were praying directly to him ourselves. Like, and we would have like this certain time in church where everyone would be quiet and we would just get on our knees and pray, and that's the only time I really felt like I was getting anything out of church.
Yeah, I mean, I'm co-sign that for sure. I mean, I think that I've one of the hypocrisies I find in established religion, and I think some of the things that we have a lot of hard times with a lot of surrender issues and addiction. Most of it has to do with any authority figures whatsoever, I think. But church and religious constructs always tell me I have to do certain things to get with God, but yet I met God in my most intimate place, one in a cemetery and one in a jail cell. That's hardly. I've not gone to a church yet that tells you go sit in a jail cell and get fed turkey through a slot, and that's where you're going to meet God.
Yeah.
And I found him the most powerful there. And I actually started reading a Bible for real there, and so I guess we're, for step 3, this is kind of step 2 stuff where we understood a real God. But, I guess, what successes, if any, have you found with this surrender portion of your journey? Where do you feel like you're consistently surrendering, or is that still a battle for you?
I think it's on and off a battle for me. I think when I'm really like in so much pain, the surrendering is really all I can do, and it really helps. But it's a constant thing. It sometimes I just have to keep doing it, and I have to keep praying every morning, and keep reminding myself of what I can do, which is just live in the now and be mindful of today and mindful of what God wants for me and try to follow that. Mm-hmm. But it's an everyday process, and I have to keep reminding myself to surrender personally. Yeah.
And, it might surprise you, but Sam and I have had some arguments over the years, and there are times where if you didn't hear her, she just did the no. But her being Irish German and me being Scottish Welsh, we are creative. Let me tell you that right now. But we, this control thing, and I find that when we really should be surrendering most, we try to take more control back. I know for you, Sam, you've had some struggles with this, and I know I have, where just this manic outpouring of anger and sadness and all this stuff, and that's still us trying to take control of our journey. And as I stated at the beginning, we are not surrendering because we want it to turn out like we want it to turn out. We're not turning over our will, our lives over to the care. And for me, and I've heard you do this some, and maybe I'm just putting words in your mouth, but we sort of do the step. We know the words of the step, but there's a tremendous amount of hour by hour work to have my will be entirely desiring his will in my life.
I agree. Yeah.
Because fear for me is incredibly difficult for me to get through. I'll take our situation we're in right now. Obviously, we're not in the home right now, although I'm going to see you tomorrow. Yay. But, we're, we're not in the home right now. And with that comes a lot of fear. And, we have certain prayers that we pray and certain actions that we do. And when it doesn't play out as quickly as we want to, man, timing can be a real frustrating element. So I guess, Sam, from your experience, time does go slow when you're not in everyday life. How are you handling the timing of God's will in your life when you're trying so desperately to have your will be his will and turn your life over to his care? But man, God, you're taking an awful long freaking time right now. How do you handle that?
It's hard. I find myself really kind of in a lot of pain sometimes, and I have to remind myself that this pain is can keep me from ever going back and making mistakes again. Try to think of it that way, and try to think, that I can create, a wonderful future for myself if I just, keep doing today, which, I can't get what I want today, but that doesn't mean it, if I keep working hard today that soon enough tomorrow will be here. So it's painful, and I have to pray constantly about it and ask him for help, just to, help me understand, I think.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, I think that I try to relate to your situation because I've been there, but it's very difficult, especially when you've got a lot of fearful things. I mean, you've got fearful things in your situation, your circumstance. There's a lot of unknown. We really want things to turn out. I think this is what you do, but I know for sure I do this. I not only want things to turn out the way I want them to turn out, I want signs all along the way that they're going to turn out the way that I want them to turn out. If not, I want them to turn out that way immediately. I'm not willing to wait. Or, God, if you're going to make me wait, darn sure better give me some signs along the way. What's interesting is that I think that some of the greatest lessons I've learned is in the middle of having no answers, where I just get to the point where I know I'm not in control. It's almost like those times of no answers. He's really just trying to say, look, are you going to stop and just leave this to me? I'm working on your behalf, even though it seems like I'm not. I'm working on your behalf, even in the quietness.
Yeah, and I think that's the time where we'll see that he was there during that time, but we can't always know that.
Right. Retrospectively, and so that, it's kind of good. Therein lies the point of Chris and Retro in the first place, is because once we get on the other side, we can go back and breathe life back into people that are going through these struggles that don't have those earmarks of where things are going well. And we can attest to the fact that what you're going through and what you're feeling right now has another side. There is another side to it. And it can be marvelous if while you're in it, you handle it appropriately. Where there's not another side of it is when we get despair and can't take it anymore. So we go to the easy route, and it's the bottle or the drug or the sex or the gambling or the cheating or the workaholic or whatever it is. But as soon as we immerse ourselves in the same old things that got us here, the lies, the lack of accountability, all these things, if that's what we continue to fall back for, we are sure to not get through the other side at any point, anytime soon. The success is in the workshop. The workshop is when we're in pain and isolated, not self-isolation. I find that different. And we've warned against isolation, but when we're kind of put in a timeout to get things together, that's the workshop. That's when we're crafting the new tools. We're forging ourselves so that we're a weapon of war against this disease that we have on the other side. And I actually believe a weapon of war, a soldier of a cross. I believe that that's what we're being proven to, because Sam, you said something to me that I think was so profound. What do you say about Satan and addiction?
That it's his greatest masterpiece. And
yep.
One of his greatest masterpieces. I think he has a few.
Yeah. And, for the audience, I did not prep her for that, but that's truth, how she does that, how she says that. And it just really hit me the first time she said that a couple of years back. And this was right in the middle of some struggle. I have hope of where we're headed just because of the work Sam's putting in to our home. And, but in the absence of that, I wouldn't have had hope. The other part about Satan's work and addiction and this whole spiritual construct of step 3 is that it is a spiritual battle. And we talked about in step 2 that if you haven't named what your higher power is, it might not be God. It still is part of step 3, whether it's God or not. For us, and as it's stated in our 12-step program, it is God. But it doesn't have to be for you to make step 3 work. It's still turning your will and your life over to a power beyond you. I think it minimizes it to be not God, but that's a decision that you'll have to make. But what Satan does do through this, and Sam, maybe this is me speaking on a turn, but I'm trying not to qualify everything, but I just don't want to speak on your behalf as much as I can. But this Satan doesn't always come at us in a black coat with smoke coming out of his freaking eyes. It's sometimes it's very shiny, very nice, very desirable. Otherwise, why do we chase something that kills us?
Yeah, I think he's there in a lot of ways. But just like, we can pray to God too. That God can help us too. I think the devil's there to distract us. But
Sam and I, as a couple, one of the things that we've found to be true too is we have believed since the beginning that we were meant to be together for work beyond addiction. We have, and we've taken a couple runs at it, but haven't really got ourselves shored up so that we could handle the heat. Yeah. We certainly got blasted this time, huh, babe?
Yeah.
We taken a whipping. But why we're doing this show for you tonight is because we believe still.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Step 3 is really about managing the process of giving up control. So I've held to the notion that you can't just be step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You can't do this little like naming them off. There's work in every single step. There's a deliberate thing that you're doing in every single step that's work within you and not in the world around you, but in you to correct the issues that got you here in the first place. And if you're not actually working the steps to all the sweat and grind of getting it done, you're not healing and you're not able to go to the next step. You should not be skipping beyond these things. And so step 3 talks about managing the process of giving control. And I think this is a mistake I've made with step 3 before is I've oversimplified. Step 1, I give up. Step 2, I know there's a God. Step 3, I give it to him. It's actually not that simple. We've got a lot of hurts and hangups. So if you want, do you think now is probably a good time to go through some of the questions here, or do you have other comments related to the setup with step 3?
No, go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever prayed to a higher power in moments of distress?
Yes.
You have? What's the nature of that prayer?
It's the nature of it.
Like, how does it sound, feel? I mean, what's in your mind when you're doing it? I mean, because I'm sure there's people praying those prayers right now as they're listening to the show.
Oh, sometimes I don't know with the prayer that I pray in distress if I'm just praying for selfish reasons, or if I'm really praying for the right reasons. I know I struggle with that sometimes, and so I've been trying to change what I'm praying for lately. But I do find peace in it when I do pray, no matter what. Like just talking to him and trying to get closer to him and feel his unconditional love.
Would you say that your prayers are different now than they are in those moments of distress? It's kind of probably hard to tell because you still are in moments of distress, I would say. It's not as bad as you were, but still, there's still distress in your life for sure.
Yeah, I'd say it's different though.
How so?
I'm not really asking him for certain things. I'm just, I'm asking him to forgive my sins and to fill my heart and then, show me, his will for me, more things like that than what I used to pray, which I don't really remember exactly what I used to pray. But.
Well, I know what I used to pray when I'm in distress as I'm leaning over a toilet, puking my brains out. God, I'll never do it again if you make me stop throwing up.
I did that.
Yeah, please take this away. I feel like I'm dying. Those prayers are a little bit different and probably not heard as much, I would think, because they're not really coming from the right heart. But our prayer, I think, is what you just described. It was touching to me, honestly, Sam, because it's different than any way you've ever phrased it before. But it really is about your will be done, because honestly, it's that surrender is giving us our best path of opportunity if we really believe in this spiritual context of what we're doing here in this recovery around step 3. If we're asking for our will be done, why even bother including God? Let's just keep plowing forward and keep making the same mistakes, or maybe just stumbling across the solution for a short period of time. If we're not truly committed to praying to a God to give us his will to be done in our life, and we're praying to him under the guise that we believe he is the solution, that's really the only way to even pray. Otherwise, why bother?
Right.
Have you ever made a deal or a bargain with God in those prayers at any point in time, either in your recovery or in that point of absolute distress?
Yeah, I have. Definitely in the past, I have.
What's your deal? Any deal or bargain you consistently make that you go back on?
Well, the only one I can really think of is the one with like when you're feeling so awful that you'll never go back.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. So,
What about you?
yeah, of course. I mean, I always make deals. God, can you just get me through this? And it's always just get me on the other side. So I guess when you are faced with and some of the questions I just asked were really step 2 questions too. So I was just, yeah, as a framework for how we pray, I think step 2 questions also parlay into step 3 in terms of how we're talking to God. But I guess when you turn over to God in step 3, this decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him, and I think that we as understand Him is an important piece because we don't know everything about God. Our journey grows at what you understood God to be when you started this most recent path forward versus, and even years before that, versus what you understand to be now. I would assume is different, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So I guess, is there a fear of loss of control when you give this over to God and you say, look, I want to follow your will and just take it your way? Is there any fear for you?
I don't think I really fear God making decisions for me. I mean, I believe He has the right path.
I had fear.
But then you have fear. What?
Well, I tell you, in this most recent situation, if I asked for God's will, what if God didn't want me to be with Sam? I don't think that's the case, but it was a real fear of mine. I don't see that anymore. Actually, I feel more fortified that I'm supposed to be with you just based on the same things that I see God working in my life before. And it's not just because I'm blindly think you're beautiful and I'm chasing you around freaking Rochester. Because I do think you're beautiful. But I also think you're beautiful for a lot of reasons that your beauty connects with my heart and it matters to me. But the loss of control, like I at first I was afraid that what if God's will is that we be apart, and maybe I did misread the whole thing. What if He's actually telling me something different? And as I go through, what I'm seeing is the same things happening with our situation as it happened in my life many times before, where many things outside of my control are all coming down the exact same path independently without any influence from me to a resolution that's becoming very obvious. And that it's not fearful for me because I see that at first He's aligning my heart with what His will is. So I'm satisfied with the outcome. And secondly, once I'm aligned with what His will is, I start seeing Him moving everything towards that will. But it starts with my willingness to accept the fact that I've turned over my will to Him and my life. And in doing that, the circumstances around me become very clear. And it's given me peace to know that I wasn't missing the mark when it came to you or our circumstance. Maybe not all the details that I have nailed down, but I would think I was correct in the fact that I am aligned with you and our purpose for our life.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think we have a lot of purpose.
Mm-hmm. A lot of other things too, insanity, attitude problems, that type of thing. Did you lose control of your life due to lack of the next question in the workbook that we've been working through, is did you lose control of your life due to a lack of rational judgment or a lack of emotional control? Has lack of emotional control or lack of rational judgment caused you problems?
Definitely a lack of emotional control. I mean, I think rational judgment was probably always there, but my emotions were stronger than rationality and drowned out any rational judgment I had at the time. I mean, I certainly don't plan on doing that again soon. I mean, I plan on having support so I don't make those impulsive decisions. But yeah, I think my emotions were just made my decisions poor, and I didn't really care that it wasn't rational. Yes.
I think when you're not being emotional, you are a very rational person. You actually listen to input. Yeah. You're very coachable. When people are talking to you and giving you advice, you absorb it. You read a lot of books. That's why you were excellent as an athlete. That's why, and I want for the audience, just so you're aware, I mean, excellent doesn't even touch it. She comes from, an excellent father who's a phenomenal athlete by his own right. And, Sam was too. And both of them very intelligent academically as well. So I think that when you aren't having all these high emotions that are, driven into insanity by drugs, you are a very rational person. But what I've noticed is that your emotions shut down your ears to any coaching or anything. And you just won't, you have an emotional level when you're using that's beyond most people. Like you'll do things that just absolutely hurt yourself just because you can't handle the emotions.
Yeah.
And I think in that case, it does bleed over to rational judgment. And I do the same thing. We both have rage that happens, and it causes problems. And that's all addiction. We've touched on this, but I mean, do you believe your higher power has a plan for you?
I really hope so.
I think mine does. I think God does for me. And I think it's natural for you. We talked about God as we understand him. Well, you're at a stage in your life right now where you understand him to a certain point. He's revealing himself to you every day because you're listening. But you hope he has a plan for you. You don't have to be there yet. That's the thing is for the audience, you absolutely do not have to be at the same stage we're at. You might be miles ahead of us on this journey. You might be listening to this and going, yeah, duh, Chris, Sam, you got to be kidding me. Of course, we already knew that. Why weren't you listening to us? Well, because we're a little slow and it takes us a while, but people that are not quite to this point, it's going to be okay. You'll get there. The point of step 3 is saying that we're all in different places. You and I, Sam, could have the exact same beliefs, have the same days of sobriety right to the hour, and be in different stages with our relationship with God based on any number of factors. It doesn't change God, but our position with God based on our own understanding and behavior makes a difference. So I guess a couple more things that we really need to get into, because a lot of this stuff is obvious to me, relative to when you pray and that type of thing. But how do you maintain a presence of God in your life? And guys, I want to just qualify for a minute. This is not an evangelical show. And I'm not on here going to pump in Billy Graham or anybody else to do some big revival here. For Sam and I, in some very desperate times, we've found the principles that we're sharing with you to be true wholeheartedly. And we've done plenty to do things in our lives that have been extraordinarily damaging. And so for us to, as human beings, do things to ourselves and others that have hurt people and ourselves so desperately and lost so many opportunities, that when we've seen what we call God help us beyond that in baffling ways, we're just professing that to you so that you understand this is what our higher power is and how we seek him out. So if your higher power is something different than this, I would encourage you to follow the earmarks of what we're doing, and please listen and don't shut down just because we're talking about God the way we are. And I hope that makes sense to you. It doesn't diminish what I believe to be true about God. And I think your best path forward is to follow what we've seen. However, the things that we're talking about, the same process works for whatever it is you have. And if you find your higher power is not strong enough to get you beyond it, then you might want to reconsider who you're looking to as your higher power. But I guess, Sam, how do you maintain that in your daily life? That maintain the presence of the higher power in your daily life?
Well, I think that's a great question. Something I'm trying to figure out more and more how to do. I think reading about it, in the life recovery book that I have, and in step work, in the Bible, I think that you can maintain this presence there, and you find out through his word, and praying. But how do you keep the presence?
How do I well, you know me, I've got anger issues like miles long. I also shut down, and that's damaging. So I have to do the opposite of that. So I don't fake my emotions, but I find that disclosure and conversations like this one are how I found I've understood that I maintain the presence of my focus on the Holy Spirit or holy higher power and holy God by acknowledging the fact that he is present and leading my life. Yeah. Now, my behavior is not always a reflection of what he wants in my life, because I'm still a very flawed human being. And probably before I go to bed tonight, I'll do something disastrous because I do that. Somebody's going to do something that's going to piss me off, and then I'm going to go freaking crazy train, and I'm going to spend the rest of the night asking God to please help me figure out how not to do that again. But, it just really is that rigorous thing that we hear about all the time in 12-step programs. It's rigorous honesty. You know, if I start seeing that scope creep in, I mean, even the challenges of a relationship period, you know, it's the stuff you and I, Sam, that we have to work through. We're constantly, it's a rigorous work. I guess for me, the most problematic part of all of it is just focus and my own pride. I continue even, and you and I had this conversation the other day, and I even had it with a sponsor, we kind of co-sponsor each other the other night when I was in Houston. We had a conversation on the phone, and you know, I spend 90% of my time scheming, planning, obsessing, trying to figure out absolutely things that I can do nothing with, like literally nothing with. I'm trying to develop plans to help you have a better situation and figure out how to do this and have you feel a certain way and have you not be sad and have you blah, 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 and make sure the girls are safe and all this crap that I can't do anything about. But yet the one person I believe and have seen over and over that can do something about is God. And yet I'm going to him to ask him to do the things that I'm thinking of because I run out of gas with him. And that's particularly problematic for me. And so that goes back to the 3 triggers I have: fear, procrastination, and controlling behavior. So in so much that I continue to have that obsessive behavior about things I can't control, I still am on that fence of real trouble if I don't figure out a way to crack that code. So I would say that's been an ongoing problem for me. And I would say it's habitual.
Yeah. It's tough.
So we're at the point of step 3 of surrender. You know, we've come to the point where we need to surrender. We need to turn our decisions, our will, and our lives over to God, the care of God, as we understood him. I'm going to read, there's a step 3 prayer. Did you have anything you want to add on that at this point?
No, go ahead with the prayer.
Okay. So the step 3 prayer is: God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. I don't speak like this, guys, just so you know. I use different versions of English. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. The victory over them may bear witness to those I would help to thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. I love that because, not because of the way it's worded, it's, you know, King's English is not really my cup of tea, but the point of it all is so that I can bring others to recovery, so that I can bring others to understand that God was a massive part of why I was able to be okay. It's not just that I get better. It's so that I help others. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that's the, you know, part that I've been praying about a lot too, and I look forward to is getting to a point where I can, give back. I think I can get the most out of that and learn the most and, feel the most from giving back and helping other people who are struggling or in places where I've been, and I can feel like my life was, or, the pain that I've been through is worth something. So I agree with that. And that's something that I look forward to all the time.
So here's the beauty of step 3. And I'm glad you phrased the way you did just then, Sam, because here's the beauty of it. Step 3 doesn't say complete step 3 and you're going to start seeing the rewards. What you're doing on this show right now is giving back. Your aspirational goal of the so that part of this prayer, you're doing right now. You know, you're giving back. And I would hope that I can't imagine somebody hearing you wouldn't find a stir in their heart to say at least a relatability factor. Now the pressure is on for you because now you have to see it through and show them what it looks like to make it through the other side. This is not easy work. It's a full contact sport. You know, the prayer talks about relieve me of the bondage of self. We are having to remove our own bondage of ourselves to ever get to a place where we have a good relationship with God so that we can move forward and also truly embrace the rest of the work of the steps. If we allow ourselves to remain in that bondage by doing what I do, keep that controlling behavior around 90% of my thoughts, I'm still in bondage to myself at that point. I have not really done, I've made the decision, but I haven't actually done the action of turning over my will and my life to the care of God. There's a lot to this, and it's not easy. So for those in the audience that have tuned in this thing, if you came in here for a bumper sticker conversation, it doesn't work that way. Sam and I are going through a very powerful understanding and revelation of what we have not done in the past and got us in a lot of trouble even now. We are trying to dig back into this work in the way that was always intended to be and find new light and new hope and new skills based on the training that we're going through in our spiritual gym right now, in the workshop that's crafting the tools that we need to be successful.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? We're a little longer than we normally go on this thing, but I'm just, what are your final thoughts? There's probably somebody out there that either recently went through what you're going through or maybe heading into it. Maybe they're sitting right now watching this. There's been comments on these videos from people that are actively in use and just want to stop. And they're saying all the things that you and I have said before we actually get better, that we say to make people think that we really want it. And then we go out and use. What would you say to the people that are going to go through this hard work? I mean, we're making it sound like a really daunting task.
I would just say that there's so much in the one day at a time. Everything seems so, like right now it's a struggle for me being away from my kids, and I miss you and my family and not being together, and the pain with that, and fear of the future of what I'm dealing with. So I think there's so much in just doing it for today, and that's all you have to do. And I think you every day you got to remind yourself of that, because it's easy to remind yourself one day and then not the next day, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'll have to do this every day, and it's too much, because it is too much when you think about it like that. So
I love the way you phrase that, Sam. I honestly just wrote down, I think you just changed the title of this video with what you just said, because this is a call to action. The work of surrender is surrendering just today, every day. You really boiled it down to something that's more manageable. You're just doing it today. It's not a lifetime surrender. You're doing it today. But
yeah,
the other part of that, the grace of all this, is you can surrender right now. You don't have to wait till tomorrow for the start of the day to surrender for a day. Our higher power allows you to have fractional days of surrender. It's all progress. A couple weeks ago, I talked about the notion of getting overwhelmed by dishes, and there was progress in at least just doing a few of them. Even if you can't get to all of them now, at least it's progress. It's the same thing with this work we're doing. If you're all the way through here, it's currently 9:12 Eastern Standard Time PM here in New York. And if you've had a day where you've been a complete disaster, surrender right now. Close out this day with that surrender, because the beauty of what we're talking about here, this recovery work, is not open for business 9 to 5. It's a 24/7 opportunity. It's not just 24/7 of work. It's 24/7 of opportunity. And what we're suggesting is if you follow these steps as we're outlining here, the work can go away because you're turning it over to a power and a deity that made the dirt of the ground that you're walking on. I need that powerful of a deity in my life as a higher power, or I will screw this thing up, because I can out hustle anything less than him with my nature, because I'll stay in control. I won't be submitted. Surrender for me required being submitted by God as well. I don't do well until I have to do a big old timeout. And I tell you, our family right now, the timeout has been tough, because in my life, I found a pretty wonderful woman that's a real strong support and kind of recharges my batteries in life. And that's you, Sam. And so this was a big timeout. It was a big timeout. So love you too. That's all gushy. I can't edit either. Now everybody's going to hear all that gross, sappy crap. But, I hope you guys really enjoyed this tonight. Anything else, Sam, you want to leave with the audience, and then we'll get ready to wrap this up?
No, I just, hang in there. The one thing that I really look forward to is I hear from some of the people in the meetings that they couldn't have a better life. Like they're have the life beyond their wildest dreams. I've heard so many people say that, and I think these are people that have worked the steps thoroughly and rigorously, and it's there for your taking. So.
And it can get worse. Sam was around an individual today that just had to identify his ex had passed from an overdose. He was highly intoxicated and urinating on himself in front of other people. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, in the meeting, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a desperate time for this individual, and so it can always get worse. You're not rock bottom. We have a tremendous opportunity to find more. So please, if you're in a situation right now where you're at that crossroads, embrace it. Jump into this program, jump into the work, and see what you can do to get better. Sam, thanks for joining the show again tonight. We're going to do this again on Sunday. We're going to visit step 4. Step 4 is step 4 is a lot of work. And what we're going to do is probably just give you some earmarks of what step 4 is. It's a very personal one. You're going to need to do some work around that one on your own. But we'll talk about it a little bit and see if this is something that we can, make some heads or tails of it for Sam and I as well. But I'm thankful for all you guys. Please like and subscribe, comment. I'm curious to see if this content's, anything that's beneficial to you. I know we're kind of on a gray area here with AA, and I've asked advice on this because it is anonymous. But what we're not doing is sharing individuals' experiences inside the meeting. Sort of gray in what I just stated, but it wasn't, nobody, I don't even know who the person is. But, we have to realize that this is still good information to put out there. And honestly, I believe it's good information for recovery from all kinds of things. If you have any number of things going on, this is really high performance living. And it takes nothing short of that to get yourself out of a really bad situation. Again, thank you for tuning in. And between now and the next time we talk, I'm going to do every single thing I can do to stay out of trouble. And I hope you do too.